It's all good.
See what you
I'm just telling you my own standards, man. These are my values.
Oh man. So Gabe,
What's up, man?
man, we're talking about mental health. So Gabe, just for a little background, first of all, great to have you on the cast. Man, so just a little bit about you. You're a pastor. You're also a teacher. You've been you pastored for a number of years, like 4 years, I believe.
Yeah.
4 years. In Augusta, Georgia.
I did.
Shout out.
Yeah, it is.
It's both of our stomping grounds.
There it is. Yeah, man.
And yeah, man, I feel like you have a lot of wealth now. You're a teacher, serving as a high school teacher. But man, let's jump into it real quick.
All right.
Because we're trying to get quick, concise to the point. But at least while we were setting up, you even mentioned a little bit about mental health. I've talked to you before as a friend, and you've talked about really prioritizing your own mental health and your wellness. And first of all, how are you doing? How is your mental health?
I think that depends on who you ask. Some people may say I'm completely unstable.
Yeah.
No, and I think I'm doing a lot better, and I think it's very interesting that we're talking about this because I have lived a life where I've seen very, very up close and personal that intersection between spirituality and mental health and how one affects the other. Today, I'm doing a lot better in my personal growth and development, and it's helped me to even expand my understanding of that. And so I'm grateful for that opportunity, man. I'm grateful for the opportunity. But in answer to your question, I'm doing great now. Doing great now, so I can't complain.
Excellent. So I feel like, at least growing up, I often heard like expressions, if I was feeling sad or down, oftentimes people would be like, if you remember all your blessings, you have nothing to worry about. Or if I oftentimes came with challenges, even with my parents, a lot of the time, they'd be like, pray about it. I asked you, did you pray about it? Did you bring it to God? And honestly, on more than one occasion, with people close to me in the past who are Christians, they'll be like, instead of when I suggest like maybe I should go to counseling, they'll be like, well, I'm not sure if you really need counseling as much as you need the power of prayer and of Jesus on your side. You know what I mean?
Right.
So almost like sometimes I feel like there's this this disconnect in Christianity between like mental restoration and or rather, should I say, maybe the inappropriate connection of mental health and spirituality.
Right.
Because I know that they intersect, but it's like sometimes spirituality is used as like the end all or this complete solution for achieving mental health, right? Which I mean, I think there's a lot of components there because like Jesus kind of healed people mentally, right? He like restored them. Like the demoniac, he had some mental issues, but like he restored it. But at the same time, it's the example is used a lot oftentimes like if you have a broken leg, are you gonna just pray about it or are you gonna go to the doctor real quick?
Right.
To go to the hospital. You know what I mean? Or if you have a car that has like an engine malfunction, are you just gonna pray about it or are you gonna take it to the mechanic?
Facts.
So like do you know where this comes from? This idea of like speak of that.
Yeah, man. So I don't know that I know all of the components involved in its origins, but I do think that being Christians, we see in the Bible how the miraculous intersects with the mundane on a almost seemingly regular basis, right? And so we are bombarded with stories of the Red Sea opening, right? Moon, stand still, sun, stand still, right? Like these are the stories that we grow up with. And so I think what that does is it makes us believe that every occurrence in our life is subject to a miracle. And here's where we have to be careful because number one, it is. Right? They can happen in any area at any time. Number two, we also have to realize that these were not everyday occurrences.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So when we read in the Bible how God would talk with people, even face to face, right? In human form. So he's talking with Abraham. The conversations he's having with Abraham actually span years, sometimes decades. And that's something that we don't see in the Bible. We don't get a good grasp on. Visions. Daniel had a vision in Daniel chapter 8. Many years later, he gets the explanation in Daniel chapter 9, right? But because we can read it in a 15-minute time span, obviously it happened immediately. And so I think part of our challenge becomes we don't realize sometimes not so much the actually, I think because we don't understand the timing, we don't realize the extraordinary nature of the miracle. And so Jesus garnered so much attention because what he was doing was not common. Like that's not something that you saw every day. And we have to realize that God has done a couple of things. He's given us this access to the extraordinary. But he works through the mundane. He works through the ordinary. And he set the universe up to work that way. So you get stronger not by praying, but by working out, by lifting weights, by exercise, by manual labor. He designed that your physical body get help and health through physical means, right? When it comes to your mental health is housed in your physical body. Therefore, there are processes that are involved, just like there are processes for your health, your physical health. There are processes that can be invoked to assist you with your mental health as well. So when I'm sick, I go to a doctor. If that's by definition is something that does not happen often, right? It doesn't happen
Right,
often.
right.
It seems to almost break through the laws of nature, although personally I don't believe they are breaking with the laws of nature at all. But I think they are being used in a very extraordinary way from our perspective for the time and understanding that we have. So when you're dealing with this intersection of mental health and spirituality, I think it's a both and instead of an either or. Pray to God, ask him for his help, and go see a therapist. Seeing a therapist does not limit the power of God in your in your mental health.
Could I interject? Like,
Talk to me.
maybe let's consider Joseph, right? Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers, right?
Right.
And so we actually are fortunate to kind of see Joseph's life, still over a few chapters, but we see his life play out, right?
Right.
And at I guess when he's middle age, he's a ruler in Egypt, and his brothers come to him, and by this point he's older, right? And he's like, you thought you meant what you did to me by selling me into slavery for evil, but God meant it for good.
Right.
Here, right? But what I'm saying is like he has this long narrative over many years, right? So even like in the mental healing, right? Perhaps even though we oftentimes are like just pray to God, right? Because we
Right.
see like these quick things that God does, these miracles that happen in the Bible, but maybe in fact the mental healing still is by going to that therapist is actually the miracle. Maybe God prepared that therapist and their whole life experiences to meet you in that moment, right?
Right.
And then you have to take that process with them, and then at the end there is a miracle, right?
Right.
So it's not like the slow way to mental healing is not a miracle, or it's not of God, or seeing the therapist. It's God working all things together for good, just like He did for Joseph.
And I think you're right, man. I think that's how a lot of life goes. But I think there's something while you're talking, I'm reminded of the fact that we are very much interested in product, where God is interested in process. And so, in dealing with mental health or any issue in our life that we are uncomfortable with, don't approve of, don't like, a lot of times we want the situation to change, and we want it to change quickly, when what may be best for the situation is for there to be a change within us, within how we move and we live and we process things. And so sometimes the journey is far more important than the destination. When it comes to mental health, I think we simplify that a lot. Number one, when it comes to mental health, there are situations that causes our mind to just be over the limit. It's past where we can handle normally, right? There's situational things, and your mental health can go down. There are genetic things that you just have within the makeup of your DNA that can affect your mental health. There are things that are based literally on nutrition, what you're eating, right? That can affect your mental health.
Right.
So there's so many different things that can affect your mental health. And a lot of times it's important to uncover, why am I in the space that I'm in? Yes, God could work a miracle, or maybe He could lead you to somebody and say, hey, maybe you need to make this tweak in your diet. Maybe you need to add this or take this out. And you find that you're feeling a whole lot better. Maybe you need more sleep, and you need to go through the process so that you understand how important sleep is, right? It could be it's situational, and you may need a social network. And that's something in our spiritual walk that we a lot of times don't understand the importance of, and that's our social life. Christianity was never a journey meant to be taken alone. Your social life, your relationships are as much a part of your spiritual health as is prayer and Bible study. And so we think that people are separate from the process that God uses to work in our lives, when they're actually the tools that He likes to use the most to work in our individual lives.
And so, wow, that's good. I'm thinking, like, while you're talking about this, do you think that maybe, because you said, like, there's many factors that are contributing to mental health, because our minds are housed within our physical bodies, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, and our minds are actually made up of physical matter, right? So, like,
Sure, yeah.
would you say that maybe as well, because we can't see our minds, we can't see our mental processes, because it's like, no one really, it's something that we all know that happens, but I mean, it's like electrical impulses, so nobody sees it, right?
Right.
Versus like other areas of our lives we can see, right? Like if we're physically sick, you can see that, right? If you have a monetary problem, that's, but when it comes to that, maybe we equate in Christianity the mental directly with spirituality, and like in this realm of only God can solve it, because God dwells in a place where we can't see Him. Right. And so the mind, our thoughts dwell in places that we can't see them. So they're both intangible, or not materialized. So maybe we automatically equate God is always the ultimate solution, but God directly affects and only Him, versus like these various things that make up our daily lives that could also, like, whether it be our what we do with our bodies, how we spend our time, or seeking other help out externally. We're like, we don't need that, right? Because these are both intangible things, right?
No, I think there's some truth to that. I think something else is the mind is extremely complex. And it is not easily changed. what is it? The old saying, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. Right. In other words, you can convince someone with overwhelming evidence and they still hold the same opinion and they can know that you're right and they'll stay right where they are. Because
facts.
our
That's facts.
minds work in ways that science is now just beginning to understand particular aspects of that. And I think one of the reasons why we kind of relegate this to the God realm is because it's so complicated and because we've tried so many things that we've come to this conclusion that, yeah, it's just him, right?
Yeah, right.
And I think that we do ourselves and him a disservice. We do the same thing in the realm of the physical sometimes, where like people will they'll go to the doctor, they'll get better, and they'll be like, God did it. It's like, yeah, but she helped.
Right.
Right? You know what I'm saying?
You're right.
And so I think we have to be very careful divorcing things that God himself has put together. God co-authors this existence with us. He's chosen to do that. And so there are aspects of our existence where, yeah, we wrote that chapter, right? Or he helped. And I think that we have to begin to really see the integration of the human with the divine and understand how intimately connected they are before we can really appreciate and see, okay, so where does this intersection show up with mental health and spirituality? When do I need to go to a counselor? When do I just need to pray about it? I think a simple, very, and maybe oversimplified answer is always pray. The Bible says pray without ceasing. There's not really any situation in your life you're not supposed to pray about. So if you're going through something, pray about it. There's nothing wrong with fasting. If there is a miraculous or supernatural intervention that can be applied to your case, of course, seek it out. While you're seeking God's help, go see a doctor.
And like, isn't this kind of back again, full circle, like what we started it on, is that like God uses, ultimately God always, like you said, pray about it, and God always hears our prayers, but he chooses to answer them differently. Yeah. You know, he could answer them through like going to the psychologist, or he could just take it away in an instant, or, you know.
Yeah, but we try to sometimes be God of our own process, right? If you need money and you're praying, God may send someone to offer you a job. You're like, no, I want the money from God. No, he's giving you a job because he wants you to participate in the process of answering your own prayer with his help. Get a job.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If you can. Some people can't. I'm not dealing with that. But I'm saying there are a lot of times where the ordinary is the means or are the means that he uses to accomplish the extraordinary. And so don't get so caught up in dictating to God how your healing should take place, dictating to God how the process has to look. Use what you have. What did he tell Moses? He says, I want you to deliver the Israelites. And then he asked Moses a very pertinent question. What do you have in your hand? God used what Moses had direct access to. And through that ordinary means and measure, which was a staff, he had a rod in his hand. God used that to do extraordinary things. What's in your hand? Do you have access to a therapist? Do you have access to a social network? Do you have access to other resources that could potentially help? Then use that, add the divine to that, and then see what God does.
I love that. I think our time is about up, yeah, but I think in summary is, could you recap that for
us? That's hilarious. I'm sorry. I think in summary, what I would just say is, number one, don't dictate to God how he should heal. Don't dictate to God the process. Share with God your problem and let him work it out. Number two, realize that God often uses the ordinary to accomplish the extraordinary. Don't look too far or too wide for your healing to take place. Look to the divine. Maybe it'll come through something or someone that's right there. Number 3 is God told Moses or asked Moses, what's in your hand? And through what Moses had direct access to, God accomplished the extraordinary. So what's accessible to you right now? What do you have in your hand? What resources do you have? Use them and continue to pray. It's not an either or, it's a both and then watch God work.
Wow. Pastor Johnson, thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
Anytime. All righty.
that. Perfect timing.
All right, and we're done.
Oh, that was good. Thank you, sir. 20 minutes?
And we're done.
And we're done.
You're going to have to show me how to